Factoring quadratic equations, Part 1. Given the general form of a quadratic equation, y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, we're going to factor when a equals 1 and c is positive. So on this video, the coefficient of the x squared will always be 1, and the constants term, the c, will always be positive. So we have x squared plus 4x plus 3. Now, step 1, you take the constant term and you factor it. So the factors of 3 are just 1 times 3. Then when we add those, 1 plus 3 equals 4. This 4, when we add these two numbers, must match the middle term. Now, for this part, we will always have two parentheses. Because the x squared term is just a positive 1, our first term in the two parentheses will always be x. There are two terms. The last term will be this 1 and 3 from the factors. See, 1 plus 3 equals 4. That's our middle term. Whatever the sign is in front of that middle term will be the sign of both of the parentheses. So it's x plus 1, x plus 3. Now, to check, the middle term, 1 plus 3 equals 4. There's our middle term. And our end term, the constant, is 1 times 3 equals 3. Now that's just a check to make sure that we have factored this correctly. Here's another example. X squared plus 7x plus 6. Step 1. 6 is 1 times 6 and 2 times 3. Now you must always factor that constant term and write the factors out here to the side. Now, for the middle term, it's 1 plus 6 equals 7, and 2 plus 3 equals 5. Well, see, our middle term is 7. So I draw my two parentheses. I know that my first term in the parentheses is going to be x, because x times x gives me the x squared. Now my middle term is 7, so I'm going to use the 1 and the 6, because 1 plus 6 equals 7. Now to determine the sign, it's the sign of the middle term, plus, plus. The positive 1 plus 6 is 7. For the end term, 1 times 6 is 6. X squared plus 5x plus 6. Now we've already factored it. Our factors are still up here. So I don't have to refactor the 6. I know that my first terms are x times x. The middle term now is 5. So I'm going to use the 2 plus 3. 2 plus 3 equals 5. So that's 2 and 3. The middle term, the sign of the middle term is plus. So the sign of, in the parentheses, is plus. X plus 2 times the quantity x plus 3. X squared minus 5x plus 6. We've already factored the 6, so I don't have to refactor, because everything I need to look at is up here. The first term is x times x. Now my middle term is 5, so I'm going to use the 2 and the 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. The middle term is a negative, so they're both negative. Now, negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. Then negative times a negative gives me a positive. Well, negative 2 subtract 3 is negative 5. There's our middle term. And the negative 2 times the negative 3 is the end term. Another example. X squared plus 7x plus 12. Factor the 12. 12 is 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. You must always factor this out to the side. You need to see the factors. Then you add them. 1 plus 12 is 13, 2 plus 6 is 8, and 3 plus 4 is 7. Two parentheses. We have an x and an x to start. X times x is x squared. Now the middle term is 7x, so I'm going to use the 3 plus 4. 3 plus 4. 3 plus 4 is 7. The middle term is positive, so both signs are positive. X squared minus 7x plus 12. Another example. We've already factored the 12, so I do not have to refactor it. X times x, there's my first term. X times x gives me x squared. Now, the middle term is 7x, so I'm still going to use the 3 and the 4. The middle term is now a negative, so both of these are negative 3, negative 4. They're both negative. Negative 3 times a negative 4 is a positive 12. A negative 3 subtract 4 is a negative 7. X squared plus 8x plus 12. Two parentheses. X times x. Now the middle term is 8, so I'm going to use the numbers 2 plus 6. To determine the sign, I look at the middle term. The middle term is positive, so those are both positive. 2 plus 6 is 8. 2 times 6 is 12. X squared minus 8x plus 12. We've already factored the 12, so two parentheses, x times x. As long as we have an x squared as our first term, it's just going to be x times x. Now, we still have 8 as our middle term, so I'm still going to use the 2 and the 6. The difference now is the middle term is negative, so I have a negative, negative. X squared minus 13x plus 12. I've already factored the 12, so it's x times x. 13 is 1 plus 12. So we use the 1 and the 12. Sign is negative. Negative 1 subtract 12 is negative 13. Negative 1 times a negative 12 is a positive 12. And here's the last one of these. Parenthesis, parenthesis, x times x. 13 is still 1 plus 12. The difference now is my middle term is positive, so I get a plus, plus. Now, there are 6 different quadratics that all look relatively the same. They all have a 12 as the constant term. The only thing that's changing is the middle term. And there's every possibility that we could factor for the x squared plus whatever the middle term is, either 7, 8, or 13, with 12 as the constant term. Now, here's the last example. x12 plus 18x plus 32. Factor the 32. 32 is 1 times 32, 2 times 16, 4 times 8. Those are all the factors of 32. Now notice how I have some means of doing this. First I do the 1, then I look at the 2, 3 doesn't work, then I go to 4, I list all of the factors, then I add them. 1 plus 32 is 33. 2 plus 16 is 18. 4 plus 8 is 12. Two parentheses, x times x. Now, 18 is 2 plus 16. So I use 2 and 16. The middle term is positive. Now, if I have x squared plus 20x plus 32, my three factors over here, none of them add up to 20. So if these three, or however many factors I would have, in this case it's 3, if they do not add up to this middle term, there's no factor. So I know that that one doesn't factor. X squared minus 12x plus 32. I've already factored the 32, so I have x times x. 12 is 4 plus 8. So I have the 4 and the 8. The middle term is negative, so negative, negative. There's the factors for x squared minus 12x plus 32. There's factoring quadratics where the x squared coefficient is positive and the constant term is positive. And the x squared is a positive 1, not just a positive 1.